The Great Madame Giovanni by LostCanoe. "You are absolutely useless," the woman in the blue sequin said, her ruby lips wrapped around a lit cigarette pinched between two slender fingers. "Why, I think I've had more successful readings when Corey was still here. He was just a child. Such a shame he moved on." Puffing her cigarette, she rose, her crystalline headdress glittering in the candlelight. "Are you going to turn on the lights or not?" she sneered into the empty room. The overhead light flickered to life, illuminating the small room. A tiny table with tarot cards scattered across it sat in the middle. The table and 4 chairs surrounding it were the only pieces of furniture in the room. Reaching under the table, she turned off the small, soundless smoke machine and the light to the crystal ball. Yes, the reading had gone horribly, and it was all because of that good-for-nothing ghost that she had summoned 2 weeks ago, Danny. He had been late on his cues, never loud enough, and worst of all, mostly unresponsive. The nerve! After everything she had done to rescue him from that graveyard, and this is how he chose to repay her? She had dealt with many ghosts in her 25 years of being Madame Giovanni, great whisperer extraordinaire. Of course, her real name was Deborah Davinsky, from an unknown town in nowhere, Idaho. But the witless public didn't need to know that. Danny had to be the most ungrateful, lazy apparition she had ever had. Tonight had been the last straw. The sobbing woman who had begged for a reading had been so ripe for the picking, with her old money ready to flow right into Deborah's hands, only to leave with rage in her crow's feet-lined eyes and Deborah's pocketbook empty. She had been planning on Danny being around for at least a few more months, but he was a liability now. She moved to her kitchen, depositing the still-lit cigarette in an ashtray along the way. "Look here now," Deborah spoke in that no-nonsense tone. "I don't think this is working out anymore, Danny. It's time for you to move on. I release you. May your soul find peace and be born anew." She lifted her arms, golden bangles clattering as she waved them. Silence. Then a loud thud from her reading room. Turning, Deborah looked out her kitchen door and down the hallway where her reading room was. The sound of something heavy and hard rolling around made her pulse spike. All the lights in her home suddenly went out. A chill raced up her spine as the air temperature dropped dramatically. Frowning, Deborah tapped her foot impatiently. Where was all this enthusiasm when her clients were present? "I suppose you think this is very funny, but I've had it with your games, or lack thereof, really," she shouted into the still house. "Begone!" Again, silence. Then the smooth rattle of glass on hard wood, rolling closer. A single candle burned to life, illuminating her crystal ball at the entrance of the hallway. The ball began to slowly rise, stopping a few inches above her head height. Taking a small step closer, Deborah could just make out elongated, inky black claws gripping the crystal ball, one claw tapping on the ball. Her blood chilled. That's not Danny, nor was it any ghost she had ever seen before. Danny? More candles flared in the hallway, giving a defined shape to the blackness. A willowy body constructed of rolling shadows stood before her, its head mostly obscured aside from its grinning mouth. Teeth like crystal daggers sparkled within the firelight. With a voice collected from the bowels of hell itself, it rasped,
"We release you, Deborah Davinsky."
The darkness swallowed her. The Tarot Card Killer, Part 1, by The Prowler. It's the third body this week, 10th in the last month. We have a killer here who is quite proficient in the ways of death, and they're a real psycho too. A strange calling card is left on the bodies, a tarot card, but what makes it strange is these aren't your typical tarot cards. They have crude, gruesome illustrations, which forensics reported are done in human blood. The killer is walking around with a custom deck, a satanic deck. We've searched high and low, anywhere that sells anything related to tarot cards, and no one has seen a deck like this. Just to look at the cards would disturb and sicken you to the point of losing your appetite for the day. There have been only a select few we've shown the cards to, experts in the field of tarot cards and readings, and their meanings, and all have been dumbfounded and horrified at the macabre sights we have shown them. They are mystified at the horrific lengths this individual has taken with a subject they're so passionate about. The press has already had a field day with this, branding the suspect the Tarot Card Killer. A wide panic has swept over the city. In certain circles, people already saw tarot cards as some sort of evil, the devil's card game, if you will. But that couldn't be further from the truth in the normal tarot card practicing world. Now comes along this individual with their custom occult deck, and everyone is losing their collective shit. We now have to frantically apprehend our suspect, but also have to worry about the religious zealots that have come out of the woodwork, making our job 10 times more difficult. There have been 3 tarot and psychic shops blown up over the past few weeks because of these crazed individuals, spreading our resources thin. Another aspect of this killer that's throwing us off is that they do not show a particular MO in their murders. Everyone is fair game. There is no commonality between victims. Women, men, children, young, old, it doesn't matter. It also doesn't matter if you're alone or with others. You aren't safe either way. In a case like this, we would tell you don't travel alone, don't go out at night. But once again, these things don't matter. Day or night, and even if you're in a large group, the killer will get you. There is no situation where you are safe. The safest thing would be for people to stay inside their homes, but we know that's impossible. Just know it is an extreme risk every time you venture out into the streets, as long as that tarot card killer is on the loose. This latest murder is quite gruesome. That actually seems to be the only thing that is common in what this killer does. The savagery in how this killer carries out their murders is disturbing. The victims are left unrecognizable, flesh ripped and parts strewn in every direction, even missing in some instances. We have a unique butcher on our hands here, something I, nor anyone else around here, has experienced. Hopefully, we get lucky and this bastard makes a mistake, because as of now, we're completely in the dark, looking for a miracle to end this madness. The cards you're dealt by psyopticnerve. All right, Stephen. Deep breaths. Now, we're going to choose the ones that call out to you. I spoke in a calm voice. I could tell that he was way out of his depth, and I was doing my best to make it easier for him. Even still, his breathing was rapid as his hand hovered over the tarot deck. I winced a little as his fingers rested on the first card, already knowing what it was. His second card wasn't any better, or the third. I collected the rest of the deck and arranged the ones he had chosen in a neat row, mentally preparing myself for the task ahead of me. So, I'm not the most conventional psychic. I turned the first card over for him, watching his eyes grow wide as the devil was revealed. And these cards aren't meant to be taken literally, in most cases. I paused to turn the next card over. The Ten of Swords glared back at us. The bleak image always made my skin crawl. However, you're a special case, I finished, letting him take in the imagery for a few moments before I turned the final card over. Stephen whimpered loudly as death stared back at him. I'd known how this reading would go from the moment I was drawn to his home. I'd gone through each room while I waited for him to arrive, learning all I needed to know. Stephen kept everything he owned so perfectly arranged and precise. Here was a man so meticulously boring, so calculatedly ordinary, a man who was careful not to draw attention to himself. I placed his severed hand on the table beside the cards and walked to the mantel, where the only out-of-place item in Stephen's home was resting. I brought the necklace over to him and held it in front of his face. "Tell me about Mladjone," I rasped, watching him squirm against his restraints. "Tell me, or I can get the saw back out," I repeated, gesturing to his remaining hand. I retrieved a photograph of Mladjone from my briefcase. The necklace around her neck was the same one dangling in front of his fearful eyes. "You killed her, didn't you?" I persisted. Stephen looked up at me in defeat, finally finding his voice. "Yes," he gasped, between staggering breaths. I nodded, finally getting the confession I needed. "All right, Stephen. That just about wraps up our session." I began collecting my belongings, placing the necklace and Stephen's hand into plastic bags as evidence from Mladjone's parents, proof that I had found her killer. I had one last task to perform, as per their request. I doused the home in gasoline and stepped out into the night. It was definitely time for a cigarette. "Later, Stephen," I called, flicking the butt into the doorway. I watched the flames engulf the house in my rear view, satisfied. Sometimes, being psychic almost makes bounty hunting too easy. I visited a fortune teller to see if my husband was having an affair. By accomplished Low, 7889. This was the first time I had gone to a fortune teller. It was on a bad street in the city center, squeezed between a Chinese restaurant and a shady massage parlor. A friend had told me about the place, saying she always went there in difficult times, and that, so far, the cards had never been wrong. Inside, there was only space for a small black booth, where a woman in her 60s sat on a tiny stool. She wore a shawl and a turban, and the air smelled of incense. On her table, a tarot deck and a crystal ball. "Hello, Rachel," she greeted me. "I've been waiting for you." I never told her my name when I called to book the appointment, and I had no idea how she knew it. "Hi," I said timidly. "My friend Becca gave me your number. She says you can do wonders." The woman didn't reply, just gave me a knowing smile. "So tell me," she began, "what is it that you need to know?" I gulped, anxious about the questions I was about to ask. "I want to know if my husband is cheating on me," I said. She looked deep into my eyes. "You already know that, don't you?" she replied. "Yes, I do." I dropped my eyes, embarrassed. "I just wanted to see if you would know it." Don't irritate the spiritual world with obvious questions, my dear. Ask what you really want to know. I thought for a few seconds and made my decision. I want to know what will happen now between me and him. She picked up the tarot deck and shuffled the cards quickly, setting the final pile beside her. She drew the first card, the moon. It means deception, intuition, and confusion. The discovery of betrayal, she explained. The second card, the Knight of Swords. Impulsive actions, confrontation. You will have a clash with your husband over his infidelity. The third card, Death. Her eyes widened. This could mean radical transformation, literal death, or both. I covered my mouth to hold back a laugh. The woman, uncomfortable, asked what was so funny. I thought this was supposed to show the future, not the past, I shared. My husband and Becca are already dead. The woman paled, shocked. I doubt she imagined that her last session with Becca would lead to this. But it was after that reading, when the cards revealed the truth would come out, that she came to me in tears, begging for forgiveness. That's how I found out about them, and why I snapped. Becca had been my best friend since high school. But I am ready to ask my final question, if that's okay. I continued. Will their bodies ever be found? Fortune by Coldblueskin. It started on Monday. Logan woke up to find that his car had been stolen. By Wednesday, his apartment flooded from a broken pipe, ruining his work clothes and computer. Thursday was worse. His boss fired him for an accident that wasn't even his fault. On Friday, while walking to the store, he stepped into a pothole, spraining his ankle. By that evening, as he limped back to his apartment, he received a call. His childhood dog, Banjo, had passed away. Each day, the universe seemed to delight in torturing him. He joked to a friend that he might be cursed. But by Saturday, it didn't feel like a joke anymore. Desperation clung to him like a shadow. That afternoon, he decided to take a walk. Maybe some fresh air would help clear his head. As he wandered through the city streets, something caught his eye. A small, ancient-looking psychic shop. He had never noticed it before. He paused, curiosity tugging at him. He wasn't a believer in the supernatural, but at this point, what did he have to lose? The bell above the door jingled as he entered, and a woman looked up from a crystal ball. She had long black hair, and her gray eyes seemed to pierce through him. "I can help you," she said, her voice raspy but kind. "You've had a rough week." Logan's throat tightened. He nodded and sat at the table across from her. He was desperate for answers. "Please," he begged, "tell me, what will today bring? Anything? I just need something to change." The woman studied him for a long moment, then began to shuffle through a deck of tarot cards. She placed one in front of him, a wheel of fortune. "The wheel turns," she murmured, "but its next spin." Logan sighed, his heart sinking. But she wasn't finished. She scrawled something on a piece of paper and slid it towards him. He read it aloud. Nexa. The word made his heart skip. "Nexa," he repeated, his voice filled with relief. He thought maybe this was it. Maybe she was the one, his soulmate, the person who would finally break his curse. Grinning, he left the shop, the weight on his shoulders suddenly lighter. He got into his car, his mind racing with possibilities. What would Nexa be like? Would she have long dark hair? A soft smile? Maybe she'd been waiting for him all along. Lost in daydreams, he barely noticed the car speeding towards him as he rounded the corner. It was too late to react. A deafening crash. The world spun out of control. In the disorienting moments before everything went black, he heard voices, sirens shouting. "I'm so sorry," a voice said frantically. "I didn't see him coming. I swear I didn't." "Nexa," another voice interrupted. Logan felt his heart drop. Before his vision faded entirely, he saw her. The driver, a young woman, her face pale, her eyes wide with shock. Her name was Nexa. And then, there was nothing. My Fiance got a tarot card reading before she died, by Forgottenwell. I don't believe in psychic powers. Reading tea leaves, crystal balls, tarot cards, I think it's all a bunch of baloney. But my fiancé? Christ, I loved her, but she wouldn't do anything without getting a reading first. It was the last thing she did before she died, which is why I went to see her tarot card reader. First time getting a reading? How did you know? I asked. The man sitting across from me resembled a pirate, including a funny hat, lots of gold rings, and an eye patch. The small basement apartment, which he called his business, stunk of cheap incense and aftershave. "I'm psychic. I know things," the pirate psychic said. "Fascinating. Why don't we start with—" "Actually," I interrupted, "I was hoping you could do a reading about my fiancé." "What would you like to know?" "Well, geez, this is kind of embarrassing to ask," I said, "but I want to know if our marriage will last." The psychic shuffled his deck and drew the first card. The sun, drawn upright. That's a good sign. It indicates that there will be joy, success, and positivity in your marriage. Tell me, do you have any doubts about getting married? Or are you and your fiancé happy together?" "We were so happy together, right up until the day she was murdered." Excuse me?" "Forgive me," I said, closing my eyes and smiling. "I just wanted to see if you knew she was dead, without me saying so." "Hey, screw you, man. Are you trying to prove I'm a fraud?" "Oh, no. Much worse than that." I flipped over the table. I drew my pistol and pulled the hammer back. "What the hell are you doing?" the psychic cried. "Do you remember my wife? Short blonde hair and glasses. She came here a lot. Used to brag about how good your readings were. She was convinced you had a gift." I pushed the psychic back up against the wall, so he had nowhere to run. "Hey, I read for a lot of people." "Let me remind you," I said, forcing the loaded gun in his mouth. "We were going to get married, but she wanted to know if she could get closure with her ex-husband first. So she came to you. You drew the devil in reverse, the hanged man, and the star. Remember? You fed her a load of bullshit. You told her that the only way she could be happy was if she forgave her ex for all of the abuse he put her through. You told her that was the only way to start her new marriage without any regrets. Do you know what her ex did when she went and told him she was going to remarry?" The psychic only managed to mumble through the cold steel, fear in his eyes. "What he did, the way he killed her and then himself, was nothing compared to what I'm going to do to you." Peaceful by Been There 11. Gwen had gone through a tumultuous divorce and job loss. 6 months later, she took the opportunity to go with her friends to Thailand during a not-so-crowded season. She could afford it, and it would be a welcome break. She was only 27. She had a good time with her friends and returned after 2 weeks. The next day, she was not feeling well. She called her parents and friends. She went to the ER with them. Her blood pressure was very low. She was admitted to the ICU and went into a coma. Doctors could not diagnose as to what was wrong, as all the tests came back fine. She lay in a coma for 6 months in the hospital. They decided to take her home with home care. At home, she had different nurses, one of whom was a Thai nurse. She heard the story and asked them to consult a local Thai tarot card reader and spiritual advisor. They all refused instantly, but after 3 months of no more progress, they relented. The mystic, Sia, talked with her friends on what they had done on the trip in detail. One thing seemed to startle her. Gwen had gotten a tattoo on her back. It read P, which stood for peaceful, as she told the tattoo artist what she wanted, just to be peaceful. Sia touched and felt Gwen's body and immediately called a local tattoo artist with the permission of her parents. She asked the artist to erase this tattoo. Fortunately, it was of the removable type. The artist worked diligently to remove the tattoo. After a few hours of removal of the tattoo, Gwen's body started to come alive. Her parents and friends gathered. About 16 hours later, Gwen woke up suddenly, as if startled by someone waking her up, and sat up in the bed, surrounded by her family and friends. She was confused as to what was happening. Her good friend Stacy explained to her what had happened, as her parents were so happy that they were not in any state to offer any explanation. The next day, Gwen told Stacy that she remembered dreaming for a long time and nothing else. When asked how it felt, Gwen answered, "Peaceful." I Can See the Future by Mladjone. 100% accurate. Well, originally that was a fabrication, but only because I didn't actually predict anything yet. A whisper campaign worked like a charm. For a smaller, superstitious town like my own, word like that spreads around. And it did. People came to me, worried about success, about luck, about risky maneuvers they had no idea how to control. So they grasped at straws, turned to the supernatural. I was their answer. I indulged them, of course. I had crystals and crystal balls at the ready, threw cards around on the table like any good psychic does. They watched in awe, not blinking, not wanting to miss the arcane magic at work. I was dressed seductively. I spoke softly and mysteriously. My house was precisely what you would imagine a soothsayer's house looked like, with a black cat to boot. And people lapped it up. It was all fake, of course. I did not need any of that. My power was that I could tell people their future, and it was always accurate. I didn't require incense, robes, nor tarot to achieve that. It was simply a learned science. No, I would say, to a fledgling businessman making a risky venture into new territory. No, I would say, to a girl wondering if that mysterious-looking neighbor actually fancies her. No, I would say, to a frustrated student asking me if he will ever pass his exams. No, I would say, to everyone, for everything. It was true every time. They knew it was. After all, every prediction I made before them was true. Why wouldn't this one be? Why would the businessman throw money away when he knows his venture will fail? Why would the girl embarrass herself when she knows the neighbor's way out of her league? Why would the student spend hours and hours studying when his failure is certain? And they were right. Everything I said came to pass. Nothing surprising, really. I am, after all, 100% accurate in my predictions. Not because divine powers grant me foresight, not because of any spirit, crystal, or birth-given ability, simply because I was right so far. There is no reason to try if you know you will fail, right? After all, I communed with the spirits and waved crystals around, right? So my story's about me getting it right. There's no way yours would be different, right? So you don't try. So you fail. It's not a question whether or not I can tell the future. Really, I can. And it will be 100% accurate. The question is, do you really wish to hear it? Well read, deleted author. This place looked more like an antique store than anything. Right next to the small circular table where she was sitting, he could see a long shelf with beautiful handcrafted boxes. Behind her was a mountain of vases, painted by true talent. All above her, luscious, multicolored jewels hung and spun on invisible threads. She gestured for him to approach and sit, neither blinking nor taking her gaze off of him. Payment is up front. Method of your choice. He handed her a $20 bill and pointed at a bag, which he assumed was full of dice. He was tired of tarot cards and crystal balls, so he wanted to try something new. She shook the bag and threw the contents on the table between them. Human teeth scattered on the grainy wood and eventually came to rest, but not before making him squirm in disgust. She interpreted the mouth bones for what seemed like eternity and settled on a conclusion. The molars, all grouped together over here. Usually it means nothing, but the canines form a cross around them. This combination is not good. It is not at all good. It points to imminent danger. You would do best to be alert and on guard. He stared at her unfazed. He had been treating himself to readings in jest for years, and it wasn't the first time the forecast called for a dark future. Some old kooky ladies with gifts were simply more mean-spirited than others. He thanked her and continued on with his day. The woman got out of her seat and carefully inspected the chair he had occupied. She picked up something minuscule, perhaps a hair, with her skeletal fingers, and approached the long shelf. She scanned all the antique boxes like books at a library, eventually settling on one adorned with black gems. She opened it, put his hair inside it, and closed the box with a smile. She knew by tomorrow both the man and the hair would be gone. Bow to the Master by Nichonova. God looked across the room to the devil. They had been called many names throughout their lives: Zeus, Allah, Satan, Hades, whatever. But the concept of the two beings never changed. One was good and the other was evil, and they clashed endlessly. Now, the two adversaries stood eye to eye, two figures that drew the eyes of everyone in the council. Lady Luck shuffled a pair of dice in a hand, one perfectly drawn and one misaligned brow, frowning in concentration. Fate laid out his tarot cards in midair, but for once he wasn't concerned about the readings. Even Father Time looked interested. This was unprecedented. His hourglass ran out and magically flipped itself. The only council member who didn't seem to be bothered by the meeting, was Cupid, his arrows laid out haphazardly on the table, bow by his side. He restrung his bow, occasionally casting a lazy eye at the proceedings, but that was all. The one on the throne spoke then. God, devil, you are aware that of all the primordial forces in this room, you are the only two with an alignment, right? Good and evil. The others do not interfere with human lives at all, except maybe Cupid. Cupid raised a lazy arrow. We're tired, Master, said the devil. Of all in this room, we are the only ones who have to keep putting wits against one another, while the others just sit there unaffected. Sometimes Lady Luck favors the bad, and I get the upper hand, or Cupid gives someone the courage to make a moral decision. We're done. Release us, please. The master looked at God, who nodded as well. They looked exhausted. He raised his hand and beckoned, walking over to a chamber. God followed him first, while the devil stood silently outside. 5 minutes and 6 seconds later, Father Time kept count. There was a flash of light, and the master walked out alone. Then the devil laughed. Master, surely there's no need for me to go now, that equilibrium has been established. Everyone is evil now. It's fair. The master considered this for a while, then turned to Fate. What do you think? Fate looked at his cards, which had swapped places and rotated in midair. Yep, they'll finish each other off soon enough, and then our jobs will be a piece of cake. The master thus dismissed the council. As the primordial forces turned to leave, Fate's cards remain in midair, but God's card was missing. The world card was slowly fading as well, along with all the cards that divined humanity. Shining bold and strong was the devil grinning in his card, with all his trickery. And reigning at the top of the pyramid was, of course, the force that even a god had to bow to. Death. I would like to give a heartfelt thank you to the special friends of the channel for your overwhelming generosity. If you would like to support the channel, the link is below in the description. Also, please send me your stories and poems to duchessofdarkness27@gmail.com. You can also find me on Instagram at duchess.ofdarkness and Twitter at duchessofdarkn2. I want to thank all my listeners for your kindness, your encouragement, and your support. It means the world to me. Thank you for joining me. Until next time.